The soft hum of the evening filled the air as Emma stood by the window, her thoughts drifting like the gentle breeze outside. She had always been a woman of grace and poise, but lately, her heart felt restless. Jake, her stepson, had returned from college for the summer, and his presence had stirred something deep within her, something she couldn't ignore. Jake was no longer the boy she had known. At 22, he carried himself with a quiet confidence, his piercing blue eyes and warm smile making her heart flutter in ways she hadn't expected. She tried to push the feelings aside, but every glance, every accidental touch, made it harder to resist. That evening, as Emma prepared dinner, Jake walked into the kitchen. He leaned against the counter, his gaze lingering on her. "Need any help?" he asked, his voice soft but steady. Emma smiled, trying to ignore the way her pulse quickened. "Sure, you can chop the vegetables." As they worked side by side, their hands brushed accidentally, sending a jolt of electricity through both of them. Jake paused, his eyes locking onto hers. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still. Emma quickly looked away, her cheeks flushing. "Be careful with the knife," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But Jake didn't move. He stepped closer, his voice low and filled with emotion. "Emma, I've been wanting to tell you something." Her heart raced as she turned to face him. "What is it, Jake?" He hesitated, his gaze searching hers. I don't know how to say this, but I think I have feelings for you." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She had always cared for Jake, but this was something entirely different. "Jake, we can't. This isn't right," she said, her voice trembling. Jake reached out, gently taking her hand. "I know it's complicated, but I can't help how I feel. You mean so much to me, Emma." Tears welled up in her eyes as she pulled her hand away. "We need to think about this carefully. This could change everything." Jake nodded, his expression filled with determination. "I understand, but I needed you to know." As he walked away, Emma leaned against the counter, her mind racing. She knew this was just the beginning of a journey that would test their hearts in ways they had never imagined. The days that followed were filled with an unspoken tension. Emma tried to maintain a sense of normalcy, but every glance, every word exchanged with Jake felt charged with emotions she couldn't ignore. She found herself stealing looks at him when he wasn't paying attention, her heart skipping a beat whenever he smiled. One afternoon, as Emma was organizing the living room, Jake approached her with a determined look in his eyes. "Emma, we need to talk," he said, his voice firm but gentle. She nodded, her heart pounding as they sat down on the couch. The space between them felt both too close and too far. "Jake, I've been thinking about what you said," she began, her voice shaky. "We can't act on these feelings. It's not just about us. It's about your father, about what people will think." Jake reached out, gently cupping her face in his hands. "I don't care about what anyone else thinks. All I care about is you." Emma's breath hitched as she looked into his eyes. The intensity of his gaze was overwhelming, and for a moment, she allowed herself to imagine what it would be like to give in to her desires. But then reality came crashing back, and she pulled away. "Jake, please. We can't do this." He leaned in closer, his lips brushing against her ear as he whispered, "I know you feel it too, Emma. Don't deny it." Her resolve wavered as his warmth enveloped her. She wanted to resist, but the pull was too strong. Their lips met in a tentative kiss, soft and hesitant at first, but quickly deepening into something more passionate. For a brief moment, they allowed themselves to get lost in each other, the world fading away around them. But then Emma pulled away, her heart aching with guilt. "We can't do this, Jake. It's wrong." Jake looked at her, his eyes filled with longing. "Maybe it's wrong, but it feels so right." Emma stood up, tears streaming down her face. "We need to stop this before it goes too far." As she walked away, Jake sat in silence, his heart heavy with the weight of their forbidden connection. He knew they were playing with fire, but he couldn't help the way he felt. That night, as Emma lay in bed, she replayed the moment in her mind. The touch of his lips, the warmth of his embrace. It was everything she had been trying to avoid, yet everything she secretly wanted. She knew they were walking a dangerous path, but a part of her couldn't let go. The tension between Emma and Jake grew with each passing day. They tried to avoid each other, but the pull was too strong. Every accidental touch, every shared glance, sent sparks flying between them. Emma knew they were treading on dangerous ground, but her heart refused to listen to reason. One evening, as they sat together on the porch under a sky full of stars, Jake finally broke the silence. "Emma, I can't keep pretending like nothing's happening between us," he said, his voice filled with emotion. She turned to him, her heart racing. "Jake, we've been over this. We can't keep doing this to ourselves." He reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "I know it's complicated, but I can't help how I feel. I love you, Emma. I've tried to fight it, but I can't." Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at him. "Jake, I care about you too, but we have to think about the consequences. Your father, our family, everything could fall apart." Jake's grip on her hand tightened. "I know it's risky, but isn't love worth fighting for? We can figure this out together." Emma's heart ached as she looked into his eyes. She wanted to believe him, to believe that they could find a way to be together without destroying everything they held dear. But the guilt was overwhelming. "Jake, I'm scared," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm scared of what this could do to us, to our family." He leaned in closer, his forehead resting against hers. "I'm scared too, Emma, but I'm more scared of losing you." Their lips met in a soft, tender kiss, filled with all the emotions they had been trying to suppress. It was a kiss that spoke of longing, of love, and of the fear of losing something precious. When they finally pulled away, Emma's tears flowed freely. "Jake, I don't know what to do. I don't want to hurt anyone, but I don't want to lose you either." He wiped her tears away with his thumb, his touch gentle and reassuring. "We'll take it one day at a time, Emma. We'll figure it out together." As they sat there, hand in hand, under the starlit sky, Emma felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to make this work. But deep down, she knew the road ahead would be filled with challenges. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions for Emma and Jake. They tried to keep their distance, but the magnetic pull between them was impossible to resist. Every stolen glance, every accidental touch, only deepened their connection. One evening, as they sat together in the dimly lit living room, Jake turned to Emma, his eyes filled with longing. "I can't keep living like this, Emma. I need to be with you." Emma's heart ached as she looked at him. "Jake, we have to be strong. We can't destroy everything we've built." He reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I don't want to lose you, Emma. I can't." Tears welled up in her eyes as she whispered, "I don't want to lose you either, but we have to do what's right." Jake leaned in closer, his lips brushing against hers in a tender kiss. It was a kiss filled with all the love and longing they had been trying to suppress. For a moment, they allowed themselves to get lost in each other, the world fading away around them. But then reality came crashing back, and Emma pulled away, her heart heavy with guilt. "We can't keep doing this, Jake. It's not fair to your father, to our family." Jake's eyes filled with pain as he looked at her. "I know, but I can't help how I feel. I love you, Emma. I always will." Emma's tears flowed freely as she whispered, "I love you too, Jake. But sometimes love isn't enough." They sat in silence for what felt like an eternity, the weight of their emotions pressing down on them. Finally, Jake stood up, his voice filled with determination. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right, Emma. I'll talk to my father. I'll do whatever I have to." Emma shook her head, her heart breaking at the thought. "No, Jake. We can't do that. It would destroy him. We have to let this go." Jake's shoulders slumped as he realized the truth in her words. "I don't know if I can, Emma. I don't know if I can let you go." Emma reached out, gently taking his hand in hers. "We have to, Jake. For the sake of our family, we have to." As they sat there, hand in hand, under the soft glow of the moonlight, they both knew that their love, while powerful, could not come at the expense of everything they held dear. The days turned into weeks, and the weight of their decision hung heavily over Emma and Jake. They had agreed to put their feelings aside, but the ache in their hearts remained. Every shared smile, every casual conversation, was a reminder of what could have been. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, watching the sunset, Jake broke the silence. "Emma, I've been thinking. Maybe it's time for me to go back to college early. It might be easier for both of us if I'm not here." Emma's heart sank at his words, but she knew he was right. "Maybe you're right, Jake. Distance might help us heal." He turned to her, his eyes filled with sadness. I don't want to leave you, but I don't know how else to move on. Emma reached out, gently placing her hand on his. You're not leaving me, Jake. You're giving us both a chance to find peace. Tears welled up in Jake's eyes as he whispered, I just wish things were different. So do I, Emma replied, her voice trembling. But sometimes love means letting go. They sat in silence for a while, the golden hues of the sunset casting a warm glow over them. Finally, Jake stood up, pulling Emma into a tight embrace. I'll always love you, Emma. No matter where life takes us, you'll always be a part of me. Emma buried her face in his chest, tears streaming down her face. I'll always love you too, Jake. Always. The next morning, Jake packed his bags and prepared to leave. As he stood at the door, he turned to Emma one last time. Take care of yourself, Emma. And don't forget, you deserve to be happy. Emma nodded, her heart breaking as she watched him walk away. She knew it was the right decision, but that didn't make it any easier. Years later, as Emma sat on the same porch, watching the sunset, she thought back to that summer. The memories of Jake still brought a bittersweet smile to her face. She had found peace in the years that followed, but a part of her would always cherish the love they had shared. And though they never spoke of it again, Emma knew that their connection had changed them both forever. It was a love that had taught them the true meaning of sacrifice, of doing what's right, and of letting go for the sake of those they loved.